Hi. So one of the things that I have noticed with a lot of my couples that I work with and what I read from the research is that one of the things that really hold people back from having the relationship they want is the need to be right. A lot of the couples that I talk with, if you ask them independently, do you love your partner? Do you want to make this relationship work? They would say, yes, 100%. Yes, I love and care for my partner. But when you put them in a conversation together, usually they would start out very gently, but then somewhere along the way, they would start trying to be right. They would be talking about the bedtime routine. They would be talking about date night, connection, whatever the topic is. When they get to the point where they're like, but that's not what I say. But you didn't, talk about this. But I could see why you're not going to be able to do this. This is where they're starting to fall into the trap of trying to be right, like to win the argument, the conversation. When that happened, like when it happened in my relationship, I usually would notice the shift. Like, I want to be right. I want to dominate. I want to win. Then I would stop the conversation because at that point, it's not a dialogue. It is not a dialogue anymore. It's not a constructive conversation anymore. It's going to start going downhill into the rabbit hole of who's right. So, in a relationship, in a partnership, if you really want it to work, like put your money where your mouth is. If you really want it to work, then you need to shift the mindset from me against you to we're on the same team. And stop trying to win the argument. Even if you win the argument, you both lose because the relationship is damaged, right? So, to remember, one, winning the argument could mean that you are losing the connection, which is a losing situation for both of you. And two, you are on the same side. If you just remember this in your mind when you are talking about issues and bringing it back to we're on the same side. If this doesn't work, what could work? If this doesn't sound good to you, what would sound good to you? This, I don't think I could work with it. Let's talk about what else we could do, right? So bringing it back, we're on the same team. And the last point to remember is that it is valid and it is true that there are two sides of a story, there are two points of views. Right? If there's a rose in between you look at it from this side, another person look at it from another side. When it's time to draw the flowers, you're going to come up with different things. So sometimes in a relationship, we are so caught up in trying to convince our partner to see things our way. If only you agree with me, if only I could prove to you that my perspective is right, then we're going to solve this problem. There's no problem ever. But it usually is a losing battle because everybody wants to feel validated in their view. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to completely agree with it. It doesn't mean that you have to agree on the actions or what to do. But if you really want to have a loving, supportive relationship, think about how you could make space to at least understand their perspective and respect it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but you respect that, giving your history, giving your background, giving your personality. It makes sense to me, or I could see how you see things this way. Now let's talk about how we could work together. And if both partners come into the conversation with that mindset, then we usually could sidestep the fighting and the arguing. And how do you do it? I think it's really start with your mindset, right? What you think is important. The three things to remember: that winning the conversation, winning the argument means losing the connection. 2, you're on the same team. And 3, there are two points of views from, in these issues. Now, and then when you go to have the conversation, make sure you set a time that's optimal for having a dialogue. Don't set a time when you are rushed or you are going to be hungry or you're going to be tired. Try to find a good time for both of you to bring out the best in both of you. And then you start with a kind of a low stake topic. If you know that you have a tendency to fight a lot, then maybe start with something low like the garden. Right? What do we want to do about the garden this year, for example? And then practice, right? This is a practice. We are building up our capacity and resilience and skillfulness to have this kind of conversation. And then you could start your need gently, right? Take turns saying, I really would love to have the garden soil done this week, for example. And then your partner might say, well, I would love to help you, but it's kind of a big area. Do you think you could ask your brother to come help me too? Right? So then this get the ball rolling and people are free to say, I need this, I need that in a respectful and gentle way. And then you could start fighting an overlap, right? You're starting to be creative and cooperative in thinking, oh, what about this? What about 2 to 3 this Saturday? No. There's nap time for the kids. Then you start talking about solution instead of just fighting and say, I need it done right now. Why you're always so demanding, right? Try to avoid that kind of accusations and getting off topic. And then come up with a teamwork phrase, just like at work, right? You usually feel better when you come into work and somebody say, hey, good to see you again. And when you leave for the day, hey, can't wait, see you tomorrow, have a great night. Just something, right? Feeling acknowledged, feeling a sense of team spirit. So if you and your partners are working on teamwork, just say something simple like, hey, teamwork make the dream work. Us against the world, whatever it is that makes sense to you, and bring a positive closing to the conversation. And it's become a positive association for both of you when you want to work on something more high stake, like, your relationship, your parenting. But start with something small and low stake and just practice the process. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful for you. But remember, we're not in it to win it. We're in it to win together. We're not here to win over, somebody, to dominate. We're here to collaborate. Okay? And that would, in the long run, set you up for success and happiness.